Hey guys, tonight we slip into a dimly lit hall of ancient China, where the air smells faintly of beeswax and sandalwood, and the only ticking clock is a candle, slowly, almost smugly, melting away. If you're relying on it to tell perfect time, you're already doomed. But don't worry, you're not here to survive. You're here to drift, float, and maybe chuckle gently before sleep. You probably wouldn't last long in this palace anyway. Between the endless bowing, the strict protocol, and the fact that hydration is mostly tea served hotter than dragon's breath, you'd be in trouble within the hour. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And just so I know who's wandering these candlelit halls with me, drop a comment telling me your location and local time, because while these courtiers measure minutes by melting wax, I'm curious if you're creeping toward midnight or just sneaking in a lunchtime nap. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The glow around you is steady, but trembling. A flame darts ever so slightly whenever a palace official shifts his robes nearby. You're standing in the court of Emperor Shenzong of the Song Dynasty, though, let's be honest, all you really know is that you're in a giant, echoing space where candles aren't for romance, they're for mathematics. Candles, in this hall, are rulers, calendars, ticking hearts of the bureaucratic machine. No pressure, wax. You glance at the emperor, seated serenely, while attendants watch the flame's steady descent down a stick of wax, sectioned with tiny marks. Each carved line is a tiny checkpoint. When the fire eats through it, a bell might chime, documents might get sorted, and perhaps a snack arrives. You can't shake the deliciously strange idea that in this universe, hunger and government decisions depend on how fast fire munches through a stick of wax. The fact is, in parts of early medieval China, the court didn't just measure time with sundials or water clocks. They leaned on candles marked at regular intervals, each notch representing a careful slice of the passing night. The official might announce, "Ah, yes, it is now. The wax has sunk 3 notches deep," as though he were narrating a cooking show. It's quite practically, less a draft snuffs the flame, or someone sneezes too enthusiastically, in which case time itself disappears. Here's a quirky one. Some records mention candles that not only burned evenly, but hid little metal balls inside. As the wax melted, a ball would drop into a metal pan below, with a polite clink. Not exactly a smartwatch, but still an alarm system. Imagine waking not to an iPhone buzzing, but to a candle burping out a marble onto a tray. If that doesn't lull you to sleep in amusement, it certainly should. Historians still wonder if these candle clocks were really precise enough to matter, or just symbolic toys meant to impress people like, well, you. Looking around this palace, you sense both. The emperor legitimately wants to keep track of hours, but he also loves the spectacle of it, all the slow authority of time dripping away in visible, glowing increments. After all, what ruler doesn't want time itself to feel like a personal possession, neatly divided into slices he commands? The chambers around you smell faintly of smoke and parchment. You hear faint scratching scribes, bent over bamboo slips and scrolls, trying to keep pace before the next tick of wax signals a deadline. It's like the quiet agony of students furiously completing homework while the teacher checks her watch. Except here the teacher is a candle that doesn't care. You feel the unease. One more drip, and you're late. And yet, it's oddly comforting. The pace is steady, predictable. Time doesn't leap, it melts. You can almost hear your own breath aligning with the rhythm of wax giving way and pooling at the base. Your eyelids, perhaps, feel that same heaviness, like softened wax drooping slowly, gracefully, downward. As the flame wavers, The polished bronze holders gleam. The shadows of carved dragons on the pillars writhe gently, as though testing their wings. The architecture itself becomes alive when lit this way, massive beams and painted rafters, hiding playful details in the dark, revealed only by the flame-shifting spotlight. This whole world exists on wax time, at candle pace. Asterisk, you shuffle closer. The Emperor glances your way, as though amused you don't have a candle schedule tattooed on your memory. His robes shimmer with embroidered cranes. You try not to breathe too loud. You're a guest here, after all. A time traveler who looks suspiciously like someone who would fumble chopsticks. One attendant pulls out fresh candles, placing them delicately on polished trays. Time is being reloaded like a cartridge of minutes. Asterisk. You feel something cozy in the notion, lives revolving not around the urgent bleeps of digital screens, but around light itself, eroding into darkness. Flicker by flicker, the world shrinks into sleep. The longer you stay here, the calmer it feels, as though the flame's rhythm is your rhythm. You sigh, somewhere between amusement and surrender, knowing this journey will not rush. Asterisk, the mark has burned halfway down now, and somewhere across the hall, a gong gently shivers, announcing what might be the hour, or perhaps simply that the candle has grown a little shorter. The difference hardly matters. You let go, and your mind drifts with the smoke curling upward. Asterisk, time, tonight, is melting just for you. The Emperor leans forward in his lacquered seat, examining a candle with the cool severity of someone deciding if this is the sort of flame worthy of dictating an empire's bedtime. You can sense the weight of it. This isn't just decorative wax to him. It's as important as an imperial edict. You're standing there thinking, really? All this fuss over something you buy 2 for 1 at the local store. But to Emperor Shenzong and his court, this is precision technology, cutting-edge timekeeping that deserves an audience. Asterisk, the Emperor squints. A court artisan whose entire job is apparently guy who handles wax, steps nervously beside him. The candle has tiny lines carved into its surface, like little steps. Each step promises a measured interval. The flame licks down slowly, and when it reaches the next notch, that's a sign. The next task, the next meeting, the next snack. This is where time meets bureaucracy, all dripping in wax. It's strangely comforting knowing that the emperor of one of the most sophisticated civilizations in history also relied on something that sometimes sputtered out if the window was left open. Asterisk, one solid historical fact here. During the Song Dynasty 960 to 1279 CE, intricate methods of measuring time developed alongside their famously efficient bureaucracy. Water clocks were common, but in certain settings, candle clocks were practical, especially at night. They provided steady light and, supposedly, a reliable measure of hours. You realize you're witnessing the emperor not just burning a candle, but burning his empire's sense of order, minute by waxy minute. Asterisk now. For the quirky part, some sources suggest that emperors didn't just stop at measuring time with wax. They might perfume candles with incense and create a multi-sensory schedule. Imagine being reminded not only by light and sound, but by scent. A whiff of frankincense signals one task, sandalwood signals another. That's not just practical, that's scented timekeeping. Forget rose-scented calendars. Here, you could literally smell your next meeting. Asterisk still. Historians debate whether these candles were genuinely useful for actual scheduling or more of a ceremonial prop to demonstrate imperial control of time. You can picture scholars at conferences now, sipping coffee and arguing, no. The candle was accurate within 10 minutes. Another shakes his head gravely, more like a giant incense stick with big ambitions. Time, apparently, is an argument that continues to burn. Asterisk, you glance back at Emperor Shen, who is watching the flame with an intensity usually reserved for rival generals. Behind him, Advisors shuffled their feet politely, waiting for the wax to deliver its verdict. The court is arranged like a silent orchestra around the candle. Ministers standing stiffly, scribes ready to record, guards with their halberds gleaming. At the center of it all, a tiny flame consuming its own life to offer order to the empire. The metaphor practically writes itself, and you're tempted to clap, though you restrain yourself. The last guest who applauded candleburn rates probably didn't keep his head long. Asterisk, you step closer. The stone tiles cool beneath your slippers, and you notice how still everyone stands. Each person's eyes flick now and then toward the candle, like hungry diners waiting for a cake timer to ding. You can almost hear their inner thoughts when it drops another line. Maybe we can sit. The candle has become a collective watch, its waxy authority binding everyone in quiet expectation. Asterisk, at this point, your own mind drifts pleasantly. Watching a flame do its slow, unraveling dance has a hypnotic effect. The slow sway of golden fire, reminding you of campfires, of birthday cakes, of cozy evenings at home. The longer you stare, the less impatient you feel. Ancient China knew something we've half forgotten sometimes. Measuring time should make you slower, not faster. Asterisk, a soft chuckle escapes you. Here is the supreme ruler of one of history's most complex empires, fussing over a candle-tiding testing, adjusting while outside. In the city, life bustles with merchants, farmers, craftsmen, none of whom care how many ticks of wax equal an hour. It's a reminder. Perhaps the emperor isn't just commanding time. Perhaps he's reassuring himself that he too, like everyone else in the room, is human enough to be enslaved to fire. Asterisk, the wax drips audibly, landing in a tiny bronze tray. You notice how each drop lands with almost comedic insistence, as though whispering, asterisk, another second gone. Another speck of palace ceremony wasted. Asterisk, the drops build into a mushy puddle, reflecting the flame itself, like the candle is painting a warped, molten portrait of its own demise. Asterisk, the emperor nods his approval. Why, the candle has stayed burning straight. No flickers too dramatic, no hiccup in its glow. Order maintained. A scribe scratches something onto a bamboo slip, likely recording this moment with the seriousness you'd usually save for documenting taxes or invasions. Asterisk, at this point, you wonder something. Did the emperor really feel reassured that his flame was marking time, or was this all a bit of theater? Historians still wonder if candle clocks weren't simply tools of showmanship, a kind of stage prop to display control, as though the emperor himself could dictate to the universe, "Fire shall burn at my command, and time shall obey." You can't decide whether that's genius or just imperial pettiness. Asterisk, but none of that matters to you tonight. You feel your own breath slowing again, in rhythm with the flame's gentle sway. The candle narrows, wax puddling into shape, the scent faintly sweet and smoky. Shadows bend softly along the carved dragons of the hall, and though you are a time traveler out of place here, the warmth of the flame seems to say, asterisk, all hours are yours, all minutes melt equally, all nights end the same waste, lowly. Quietly, asterisk, asterisk, the emperor sits back, satisfied. You, too, feel the satisfaction, weary but calm, as though the candle has reassured both ruler and traveler alike. The flame continues its ancient countdown, whispering lullabies of vanished hours. The candle in front of you looks almost smug tonight, tall, neatly pressed, carved with careful increments like a ruler that insists on melting away at its own eccentric pace. You tilt your head toward it, curious. It's more than just fire and wax. It's craftsmanship disguised as everyday object. And here in the Song Dynasty Palace, artisans take their wax as seriously as modern engineers take microchips. To them, you're watching not a candle, but a machine, a softly glowing timekeeper with its own fragile heartbeat. Asterisk. You glance at an attendant balancing a tray of fresh candles. They're not all identical. Some are thicker, others slender, and you catch the faint perfume emanating from them, a sweet mixture of beeswax and oils like cassia or even cinnamon bark. You can't help but imagine them as the scented candles modern households buy for relaxation. But here the stakes are higher. These candles aren't meant to smell nice while you fold laundry. They dictate when palace banquets end, when petitions are heard, when scribes get to rest their aching hands. Asterisk, the emperor gestures at one particular candle, clearly his favorite. It is tall, white, and smooth, with blackened lines carved into the wax at regular spaces. Each line represents, allegedly, half an hour. Of course, the emperor hasn't exactly tested this against a stopwatch. He's relying on the work of court artisans, who swore these had been carefully measured. You watch one lower-ranking courtier frown slightly, as the wax seems to melt a tad faster than expected, and you almost laugh, imagining him thinking, "Great. Now the empire is 10 minutes older than it's supposed to be." Asterisk, here's your historical nugget of certainty. Across China, candle clocks were indeed marked at regular increments, and many were designed in pairs, so a fresh one could be lit as another burned out, maintaining continuity through the night. The engineering was clever. If imperfect, it gave courtiers a sense of rhythm in an age where the sun and stars weren't always enough, especially indoors. Asterisk, the quirky tidbit. Some artisans experimented with embedding tiny weights inside. As the wax melted and the weight dropped into a metal catcher, the sound ping would announce the interval. You imagine trying to nap in a chamber where every candle hour ended with something like a polite little dinner bell. Not exactly soothing in. Less your idea of lullabies includes metallic CL inks. Asterisk now. Historians still debate whether craftsmanship guaranteed accuracy, or if it was closer to ritual theater demonstration that wax appeared to align with ours. Did these marks genuinely match the passage of celestial time? Or was it simply good enough for palace routines that didn't need split-second accuracy? A drafty window, after all, could send an entire schedule into chaos suddenly. Officials scrambling because time literally evaporated into smoke. Did anyone dare blame the emperor's candle when things fell off schedule? Probably not if they hoped to stay employed. Asterisk, the chamber around you is still. The candle's tiny roar is astonishing if you listen carefully, like a miniature campfire humming away. The smell grows thicker, warm wax mingled with the faint tang of incense drifting from the next hall. Shadows stretch wider, wrapping columns in moving patterns. Your own breathing slows to match the wax's pace. Time itself feels softer here, as though the flame permits you to drift, relax, even forget the to-do list you're hiding in the back of your brain. Asterisk A. Ripple of humor stirs in you. Imagine an entire empire's officials hurrying their work, scribbling furiously, because their boss decided candles were the best stopwatch. In some alternate universe, you picture modern offices swapping out computers for giant ceremonial candles, and interns nervously reporting, "Sir, we lost 15 minutes because a pigeon sneezed near the flame." Asterisk, you take a slow step and watch the candle's surface give way. Melted wax pools at the base, shining like liquid marble. Each drip forms, stretches, then falls with satisfying inevitability. There's no rush, it descends in perfect lazy rhythm, asking you to breathe along with it. A palace guard, helmet polished and stiff, is watching too. Even he seems hypnotized, his eyes momentarily soft and far away in the candle's spell. Asterisk, the emperor murmurs something, perhaps a simple remark on how steady the burn is tonight. An aide bows and nods furiously, recording this on bamboo slips as if it were work. You snicker in your head. Somewhere deep in the imperial archives is probably a scroll recording asterisk, candle burned evenly, emperor pleased. History isn't always fireworks and battles. Sometimes it's just watching wax slowly surrender to gravity. Asterisk, that idea comforts you. The flame doesn't hurry, doesn't judge, doesn't scold. It simply exists, illuminating a few feet of polished hall, pushing back the dark in ripples. you realize that out beyond the palace walls, night has blanketed the river and the stone streets. Vendors are shutting their stalls. Children sleep beside their parents. Dogs curl on woven mats, and only a handful of candles in humble homes echo this royal glow. Entire neighborhoods breathe in rhythm with these tiny flames. Human life ticking away with fire's patience. Asterisk, you lean a little closer, eyelids heavier. The flame bows gently in an invisible draft. Wax slouches lower. Shadows breathe across the room. And inside, you find something strangely luxurious in this simplicity, where we chase seconds, today buzzing phones, blinking alerts, schedules layered on schedules here. Time is unhurried, relaxed, incapable of being rushed. It burns, lazily, inevitably, peacefully. Asterisk whether these candles were precise science or symbolic art. You'll never know for sure. Historians still trade theories, you recall. But tonight, curled in the glow of one very determined stick of wax, the debate feels unimportant. What matters is this: the flame flickers, the wax melts, your breath slows, and time gently slips into sleep beside you. The court is quiet now, though not entirely silent. It's the kind of quiet where nobody really wants to be the first to make a noticeable sound. You wander deeper into the palace corridors, flame lights slipping across carved beams and painted dragons. Here, the glow feels different, muffled, hushed, as though the candle itself has secrets it doesn't plan to share with you just yet. Asterisk at first, you think you're alone, but then you notice small clusters of ministers gathered in corners, faces partly hidden and voices lowered to whispers. They look like schoolchildren conspiring at the back of a classroom. Except their plans are about dynastic policies instead of cafeteria deserts. Every time the flame sways, shadows ripple over their robes, making the men look like they're wearing flickering masks, half real, half illusion. Asterisk court whispers carried weight in this palace. Time wasn't their only concern. Gossip and advice, delivered carefully, could tip the balance of imperial decisions. Imagine the tension. One badly timed remark, one word spoken after a candle notch slipped past its mark, could doom or elevate a career. You can sense the nervousness, even tonight. Behind their calm appearances, you're sure one minister is silently counting wax drips, just to make sure his petition will be delivered before that stubborn bend in the flame arrives. Asterisk. Here's a historical certainty to anchor this shadowy scene. Song Dynasty courts were intellectual beehives. Civil officials outnumbered military ones, which meant that ideas and debates often mattered as much as steel. Scholars trained in Confucian classics competed through exams to earn positions, and once inside these halls, their days revolved around presenting memorials and recommendations to the emperor. It was precise, orderly bureaucracy, at least on paper. In practice, as you're now watching, it also relied on timing, alliances, and whispers behind sleeve-covered mouths. Asterisk the quirk you catch. By candlelight, ministers often had to huddle close just to be sure they could hear each other properly. The glow and shadows created a sense of intimacy, even when surrounded by protocol. Some accounts suggest attendants would read documents aloud if ministers' eyes strained too much. So, picture these supposed masterminds of empire leaning in like conspirators at a sleepover, whispering lines over candle flicker, blinking against the strain, trying not to knock over wax trays perched too close to their sleeves. The fate of the realm balanced precariously between bureaucracy and fire hazard. Asterisk historians still debate how free or candid these conversations really were. Did officials ever tell the emperor what he didn't want to hear, or were most of their breaths devoted to flattery? The records sometimes offer contradictions. Some say candor was possible, others that emperors surrounded themselves with yes-men who spoke like scripted echoes. Standing in this dim passage, you can't tell. Every face looks equally stiff, equally anxious, equally drowned in careful calculation. Asterisk one whisper swirls closer to you. The minister has a narrow beard and heavy silk sleeves. Tomorrow, the candle dictates another audience, he mutters, voice low. Time itself is deciding matters of grain and borders. You almost smile in the gloom. These men really believe time is not abstract but tangible, governed by fire and wax. If the emperor's candle slips, so does the entire agenda. Asterisk, as you move farther down, the candlelight deepens to pockets of gold and shadow. You feel the hush like a blanket, heavier with each corner turned. Paper lanterns sway gently, their thin skins of silk flickering between dark and faint glow. A servant rushes past, carrying a tray of scrolls, the corners tied neatly, and his pace is dictated not by urgency, but by steady candle marks. He won't reach his master late, not unless he enjoys punishment or extra paperwork, which in this empire amounts to the same thing. Asterisk, there's an odd comfort to the whispering here. You see lips moving, eyes narrowed, bodies angled like conspirators, but the whispers never truly escalate, never break the quiet rhythm. It's gossip that calms as much as it intrigues. If sound had texture, this would be velvet, brushing against the ear without scratching it. Asterisk, you catch sight of an older minister idly watching the flame, probably done with any real political scheming for tonight. His lips twitch, amused by how everyone else fidgets nervously in this delicate choreography. You're tempted to borrow his shrug. What can anyone do against a flame deciding when meetings end? Either the wax runs down and conversation halts, or it doesn't. Sometimes history isn't about bold choices. Sometimes it's about going with the melt. Asterisk, as the evening drifts on. The whispers soften further. Some of the ministers look drowsy, their postures loosening under the warmth of flickering light. The flame has the same effect on you, hypnotic, patient, quietly insistive. The more you stare, the more you yawn. The shadowy hall, the faint scratch of silk robes, and the endless murmur of low voices melt together into one drawn-out sigh. Asterisk, the flame dips one notch lower. Somewhere, faintly, you hear the sound of a gong, like a pebble dropped into water, announcing that another interval has passed, sanctioned by wax and fire. The whispers pause momentarily, then resume, softer still. It's as though the entire room is agreeing. Another slice of life has melted away. Better carry on before the next notch steals it, too. Asterisk, you step back, watching dragon-carved shadows dance across golden walls, always tethered to that single flame at the center of intrigue. And you wonder not for the last time tonight. Piff, maybe. The greatest empire of its day was secretly built on nothing sturdier than melted wax and whispered voices. The smell of warm wax lingers in your nose as you follow the faint clatter of porcelain bowls and silver chopsticks. A banquet is in progress, the sound of laughter punctuating the low hum of court musicians. The emperor has summoned his ministers and attendants to sit for a meal, and tonight, you have an unusual seat at the table. The air is thick with scents: ginger, garlic, sesame oil, the earthy steam of sticky rice, and, yet somehow, the candle still insists on being the most important presence in the room. Asterisk. Each table has its own timekeeper, tall white candles marked with delicate notches. You realize that even dinner in this palace is scheduled by drip and flame. It's like having an egg timer that just happens to cost the empire several artisans' full salaries to maintain. Asterisk. You sit down beside a lacquered tray. The first dish arrives, steamed fish showered with scallions. Across the room, you see a servant glance discreetly at the candle, eyes flicking to the next carved mark. He says nothing, but you know what it means. When the wax burns past that line, the food will change. Imagine a buffet where the next course only gets revealed once time literally melts. Asterisk. Now here's your historical anchor. In the Song Dynasty, elaborate banquets were a routine display of imperial life. Dozens of dishes were brought out in sequence, a ritualized expression of wealth and order. Timing mattered. Foods had to arrive, not too soon, not too late, and candle clocks provided a faint measure of structure when the musicians and servants had enough to juggle already. Asterisk, the quirky twist. Some surviving anecdotes suggest that servants didn't just serve food, they nervously matched pacing to the wax. If the candle went faster than expected, perhaps because the wick was thicker, or the draft stronger, they hustled like panicked stagehands to catch up. In other words, your duck might arrive overcooked, or all because the universe decided to poke fun with a flickering flame. Asterisk. Historians still puzzle over whether this candle-determined pacing was as consistent as described, or whether it was partly pageantry. Was the emperor really sitting there, calmly chewing, while everyone else panicked about wax length? Or was it all an elaborate statement about how time itself bent around imperial indulgence? Either way, you're certain somebody in the kitchen aged a good 10 years every time the flame skipped ahead. Asterisk on your plate. A dish of glazed pork arrives, shimmering like a jewel. You spear a piece with chopsticks so clumsy you risk starting a diplomatic incident. And as you chew, you notice again the candle's shadow stretching like a watchful overseer between bites. Conversations ebb and flow with the flame's pace, lively when the wax pool is deep, subdued when the flame leans as though announcing a shift. It's absurd and yet strangely soothing. This dinner, where time itself is a guest at the table. Asterisk across from you, an older advisor catches your eye. He tilts his head discreetly toward the candle and smirks, as if to say, "We've all learned to eat by its rules." You smirk back, relieved to learn that even the emperor's seasoned ministers can't win against melted wax. Asterisk somewhere near the dais. The emperor gestures for another round of rice wine. Servants pour, the cups catching candlelight, glowing like miniature lanterns. You raise yours for a sip, sweet, sharp, strong, and the warmth spreads down your chest. It almost feels like drinking liquid fire, a cousin to the flame that measures everyone's minutes tonight. Asterisk you blink, realizing something else. The music keeps adjusting too. Flute and lute soften or swell, depending how far the candle has burned. Is that time-based symphony accompaniment? Either by design or coincidence, the rhythm of the pause between courses seems shadowed in every corner of the hall. One candle, and yet it choreographs the whole evening, like the conductor who insists everyone else is off-tempo. Asterisk the laughter rises again as the fish bones are cleared, replaced by dumplings fragrant with sesame. You feel your own shoulders drop, your breath slowing in the mellow atmosphere. For once, you don't mind time being measured when measured this way. Time feels indulgent rather than urgent. Dinner lasts as long as the candle says it does. You're not rushed. You're not late. You might even get dessert if the flame holds steady. Asterisk. You think of a modern comparison and chuckle. Imagine restaurants today swapping digital clocks for wax. Sorry, sir. Your table will free up when that candle finishes its story. Suddenly, dining would be less about turning tables quickly and more about relaxing into inevitable rhythms. By the look on the emperor's face, maybe that was exactly the point. If time is measured by fire, then every act of eating becomes a ritual, not a race. Asterisk, somewhere. A servant gongs, softly just once, a mark of another notch, passing. New trays arrive, this time filled with delicate sweets, lacquered with honey. You're not sure if you're hungry, but you accept one anyway. The sweetness mingling with the candle's faintly smoky perfume. In this moment, sweetness and wax seem part of the same melody, both temporary, both melting away, both urging you toward contentment. Asterisk around you. Voices grow lazier. Ministers lean more heavily on their arms. Laughter less sharp now. Musicians plucking more slowly at strings. The flame has shortened, time slipping deeper into the night. Yet somehow it doesn't feel like a loss. It feels like surrender to rhythm, the meal trailing off gently, as naturally as wax between fingers. Asterisk, your belly settles warmly. Your mind drifts lazily, and the candle rules kindly for once. Tonight, you're full, you're drowsy, you're safe. Let the flame keep track of hours. You have no schedule, but to drift like smoke. The banquet's warmth fades behind you as you wander into a quieter wing of the palace. The air is cooler here, drier, and tinged with the faint musk of parchment and wood oil. Instead of clattering dishes and laughter, you hear the soft shuffle of slippers, the creak of bamboo, and most distinct of all, the hasty scratching of brushes against paper. Asterisk, you've arrived at what feels like the palace's midnight engine room, a chamber full of scribes hunched under the weary light of candle clocks, their eyes blurred from ink, their fingers cramped from all this bureaucratic labor. It's oddly comforting. Even emperors, you realize, build empires on paperwork. Except here, time is not the whir of factory clocks. It's the ever-shrinking column of wax that scolds these scholars into faster BRUSHSTROKES. Asterisk, the wax is mid-burn, about halfway gone. One candle leans precariously in its holder, drip marks staining the bronze tray like tears. Each drip at the base seems to whisper, asterisk, hurry, scribes, hurry. Asterisk, you imagine their quills as little runners in a race, trying desperately to cross the wax finish line before their candle betrays them. Asterisk, and here's the factual core. Song China, more than almost any other dynasty before it, thrived on bureaucracy. The civil service exams became the main route to power, ensuring literate scholarsmen raised on Confucian texts dominated court life. And with that came paper, endless paper. The empire kept records of births, taxes, supplies, rituals, everything. Even courtiers' recommendations came in the form of memorials, carefully written, reviewed, and stored. So while heroes swung swords in epics, real power was born under candles, with ink-stained men racing bureaucracy itself. Asterisk, now, here's your quirky fact. To cope with long nights of writing, scribes sometimes literally wrote by rotating shifts, one man writing as the other snoozed lightly in the corner. If both happened to doze, well, that wasn't as disastrous as missing a patrol on the Great Wall, but it was definitely embarrassing if the candle burned 2 notches without fresh ink hitting parchment. Imagine explaining, sorry, sire, the empire is 15 minutes delayed because your clerks were snoring. Asterisk, historians still wonder how much reliance fell on candle clocks versus more sophisticated water clocks in chambers like this. By the Song Dynasty, hydraulic-powered timekeeping towers already existed, fancier contraptions carefully measuring minutes. But here you see the candles still burning, commanding attention. Why? Perhaps water clocks didn't suit smaller, quieter operations. Or perhaps the warmth of flames simply offered reassurance that cold, trickling water could not. In shadows like these, the soft heartbeat of fire feels like company, almost companionship. Asterisk, you stroll in closer. The scribes don't look up there, too entranced by deadlines written in firelight. But you spot how carefully the attendants swap out candles, replacing each with new sticks timed to last a shift. Their sleeves are dotted with splatters of wax, unsung reminders of their role as the empire's unofficial timekeepers. Wax as the clock, ink as the lifeline, paper as the empire's very memory. Asterisk, one scribe rubs his wrist and mutters under his breath, something like, let the candle slow, just once. His neighbor snickers, both weary but unwilling to stop. You sense their unlikely camaraderie, men bound in silence, but each half hoping the flame falters so they might rest. Secretly, you empathize who hasn't wished their clock would slow down, flicker out, just for sleep. Asterisk, the chamber smells of ink and scorched oil. Sometimes you hear the faint hiss of wax kissing cool bronze, the punctuation of literal time dropping off the candle's end. Shadows rise and collapse over bamboo slips stacked like miniature city walls. And as you stand there breathing in, the monotone rhythm begins to seep into your bones. Swish of brushes, drip of wax. Swish, drip, swish, drip, like a lullaby written in bureaucracy. Asterisk, you can't help but chuckle of all the places time pushes hardest. Here is where it's measured not in war drums or alarms, but in whether the record of goat deliveries gets signed on time. It's oddly humanizing. The emperor's mighty realm quietly depended on men wondering if they'd finish counting wheat bushels before the candle ate its third notch. Asterisk, you glance again at the flame. It shakes slightly, but perseveres, confident in its destiny. Wax melts faster now, and the scribes nearly double their pace. The empire itself seems to lean over that little stick of fire, waiting for it to die so the night may finally rest. Asterisk, your shoulders relax as the rhythm overtakes you. You realize you're experiencing the same hypnosis they are, lulled to focus on nothing but that quiet harmony scratch of ink, drip of wax. Your eyelids drift heavier, and even the bureaucrats blur at their edges, looking more like silhouettes than real people. Asterisk, the candle will burn out eventually. The documents will pile. The scribes will sigh at another dawn. Yet you sense there's peace in the inevitability of it all. Like the empire, like the night, like the wax, you too will eventually melt gently into stillness. The night has deepened, yet you're not finished wandering. Your slippers whisper against polished stone floors as you make your way toward a darker, open chamber. Beyond the bustle of scribes and ministers, there's another kind of timekeeping at work, a celestial one. Tonight, you find yourself stumbling into the heart of an observatory courtyard, where astronomers in layered robes tilt their heads back, eyes locked on skies, both bright and silent. Asterisk, the courtyard is a strange marriage of stars and wax. Astronomers trace delicate arcs across their charts, careful as calligraphers, while at their elbow sits a candle notched at tidy intervals. You have to admire the irony. Here they are, brilliantly calculating the movement of planets, yet constantly stealing side glances at their tiny waxy wristwatch. One man murmurs to another when the flame reaches the third mark. The observation ends. You can't help but think, the stars move with perfect cosmic precision, and these poor souls are stuck depending on melting wax to stay on schedule. Asterisk A. Solid fact. The song Dynasty was deeply invested in astronomy, building observatories, recording eclipses, and refining calendars. Astronomers served political as well as practical roles. They helped maintain the mandate of heaven, proof that the emperor's rule aligned with cosmic harmony. Accurate star charts justified imperial authority. But here in this moment, it also comes down to whether the flame melts evenly enough to mark off proper watching intervals. Asterisk now for the odd delight. You notice one astronomer keep adjusting his candle's position, sliding a small screen behind it. When asked why, his colleague explains with patience, so the flame doesn't blow out from the night wind. Practical enough, but then another laughs softly and suggests half joke, half serious that perhaps the flame itself whispers to the stars. Some cosmic link between waxy earth time and celestial rhythms. It's whimsical, like imagining your bedside candle phoning Jupiter for an update. Asterisk, historians are still uncertain how much reliance astronomers placed on simple candle clocks for practical timing. Did they really measure the interval of star movement using melting wax? Or were the candles more symbolic, comforting markers for assistance, while the true calculations leaned on more advanced devices like armillary spheres and water clocks? Some scholars argue the candles served as a relatable signal for ordinary observers. After all, time feels tangible when you can literally see it melt. Asterisk, you step closer. The astronomer's robes are heavy, dark against the silver-white gleam of starlight. Ink-stained charts curl at their feet, weights holding down parchment corners. Their eyes shine like spilled ink themselves, fixed on constellations you half recognize. Orion's belt, clusters you know by name, and others described here with exotic metaphors, celestial dragons, heavenly birds, the gate of the sky. In this language of stars, every flicker of candle and every dot of starlight seems oddly related. Asterisk the wax flame continues burning. It's humble, small, yet the astronomers treat it with the same reverence they grant to the sky. You smirk when one apprentice scurries to note the passage of a notch with solemnity, as though the candle were just as divine as the heavens. Meanwhile, his master points toward a faint planet shimmering on the horizon. Imagine working at history's grandest observatory, only to be upstaged by a scented candle. Asterisk. And yet, there's poetry in this pairing: fire above, fire below. Stars blazing across unimaginable distances, while this tiny flame devours itself in the palm of an empire. Infinite grandness mirrored in fragile minuteness. It lulls you, the contrast, into a quiet place in your own mind. You rise onto the tips of your toes to peek higher into the blue-black vault, then drop your gaze back to the candle, each holding you in parallel hypnosis. Asterisk. Your thoughts turn gently to a mystery. What would it feel like to live in a world where your sleep, your meals, your decisions, and even your astronomy were ruled not by atomic seconds, but by soft, glowing wax? Historians still ask, did these rituals reveal a people more in tune with rhythms, or merely people doing their best with limited tools? You can't know. But here, under a rush of starlight and the steady drip of wax, you suspect those historians might fall asleep before they even solved the puzzle. Asterisk. Time passes. The astronomers yawn discreetly. Their voices quiet, then vanish. The candle droops to its final notch for this session and flickers lower. Silence tightens like a blanket. The stars continue on, unbothered by wax, unbothered by empires, unbothered by you. Asterisk. As for you, gazing from cosmos to candle, you feel smaller, softer, slower. It seems right that both stars and wax decide your pace now. Long after the astronomers pack their tools, you remain, leaning into the hush of the night, breathing in rhythmic sync with light above and light below. The starlit hush lingers in your head as you slip beyond the observatory, leaving behind the scholars who still mutter at their charts. A cooler breeze greets you now, and with it, the faint smell of earth and hay. Tonight, you step beyond the palace gates, out toward a village tucked under the same sky, but living an entirely different rhythm. Asterisk here, the candle is not king. At least, not in the way the emperor insists. In the homes you pass, light glows faint from oil lamps or pine torches. Some houses do use candles, but they are thicker, cruder, uneven at best. Villagers aren't measuring hours with them. They're measuring by roosters crowing, by stars traversing the heavens, by how loud frogs croak in nearby ponds. You realize, life outside the imperial bubble is full of timing cues, so human and unhurried. You can't quite imagine anyone squinting at wax, the same way ministers do in gold dragon robes. Asterisk. Fact anchors you here, in daily song China. Rural life was governed by natural rhythms far more than mechanical clocks. Farmers woke with dawn light, rested at midday heat, and closed their work as the sun drooped. Markets, prayers, meals all attached themselves naturally to cycles of sky and season. Time was an experience you lived with your body, not a strict schedule enforced by bureaucracy. Asterisk. The quirky detail. Some households resorted to the good old method of burning time sticks, thin wooden or bamboo. Sticks with marks that smoldered at predictable intervals. They weren't glamorous, but they did the job. Safer and steadier than dripping a pellicized candle. Though also a bit smokier, it's like having a self-timed incense stick with a whiff of charcoal thrown in. And remember, incense, unlike plain wax, gave you a bonus aromatic experience along with your countdown. Imagine modern test alarms being scented. This meeting reminder brought to you by Jasmine. Asterisk. Historians still wonder how much synchronization truly existed between official timekeeping in palaces and the life of villagers. Was there really any need for them to know if the candle had melted to the third mark? Or was Empire Time a theater reserved for elites, while ordinary people flowed with softer patterns? You tilt your head, watching a farmer tuck away clay pots, yawning while his wife blows smoke from her oil lamp, clearly ready for bed. If Imperial Wax announced it was 9:30 p.m., would they care? You doubt it. They look too content listening to the frogs sing their sleepy metrome. Asterisk. As you step further along the path, you see small stalls closing, shutters lowered like tired eyelids. The sound of traders counting coins drifts faintly into the dusk. Chickens shuffle noisily as they're herded into coops. A dog groans near a doorway. It's simple, perhaps ordinary, but, for that very reason, deeply peaceful. Asterisk. And notice this, while the palace depends on perfectly staged wax marks, village families measure their suppers a different way, by mouths full, by hunger eased. A family gathers around steaming millet porridge. No candle declares how long their meal should last. It lasts until the bowls are scraped clean, until stomachs stop buzzing. Something in you softens. Isn't this the real rhythm? The one unbothered by candle accuracy? Asterisk. A young boy points up at the stars, naming shapes his grandfather taught him, not official constellations, nothing recorded in astronomical texts. Just stories fish, caught in the heavens, ox herds crossing the sky. In this space, storytelling becomes timekeeping too. A tale lasts until the children's eyes droop. The measure is drool on someone's shoulder, not a mark on wax. Asterisk. As you stroll deeper, you feel the subtle contrast. Palace life pulsing at candle beats, rural life breathing at nature's pace. Which feels truer, you wonder? Historians argue over systems and devices, but you, here among frogs and yawns, can't help thinking the farmers had it right all along. A rooster doesn't mind being 5 minutes late, announcing dawn. You sense the villagers don't mind either. Asterisk. The draft lifts your sleeves, and you shiver slightly. Around you, the oil lamps sputter out one by one, replaced by moonlight cascading silvery blue across fields. Shadows stretch long across bamboo fences. The earth itself becomes a kind of candle, here the sky glowing, waxless, endless, dictating sleep schedules, with no wick to burn out. Asterisk. You inhale deeply. The distant peppery temps of cooking smoke still hangs low, mixing with damp soil and hay. It's soothing, grounding, familiar in a way that even the emperor couldn't deny. Your own body responds. Shoulders lower, lungs fill, every yawn heavier. Asterisk. Maybe the palace believes it owns time, but outside, you see the truth. Time belongs to no one. Not emperor, not flame, not bells or gongs. It belongs to humans and their rhythms, to nature and her cues, to the subtle, gentle nudges of sleep. Asterisk. You wrap your arms loosely around yourself. The night deepens. Somewhere a boy still whispers his little star myths, his words drifting upward, fading into quiet. You smile, letting the rhythm of the village seep into your very skin. Asterisk. The candle in the palace may still be flickering, marking diligent records. But here, you understand, the softest clock is the body, easing itself toward rest. The village fades gently behind you, replaced once again by the palace's looming outliner, shadowy giant against the night. As you step back through lacquered doors, you're drawn toward the muffled drumbeat of ritual, echoing softly from deeper halls. This is no ordinary ceremony. Tonight's it's a moment when candles aren't just telling time. They're acting as symbols, as messengers between worlds. Asterisk. You slip into the ceremonial chamber and notice. Immediately, candles aren't lonely sticks here. They're everywhere. Hundreds of them, arranged in concentric circles, in spirals and straight rows, dripping wax into trays polished so brightly they gleam like shallow pools of gold. The air is heavier, here thick with smoke, sweet with incense, and alive with flame. Each flickering light weaves with the others until the hall looks like a galaxy, one made of humans instead of stars. Asterisk, a hush coats the room. You step softer, as if your souls could wake the silence. Officials shuffle to their stations. Drums thrum once low, steady announcing the start of the rite. The emperor emerges, robes trailing lacquered silk like small rivers. He steps toward the largest candle of them all, a wax tower standing tall in the center, carved with coiling dragons that seem ready to slither free. Asterisk. Here's the fact grounding this scene. Ritual practices in dynastic courts often used fire and light to mark transitions, both mundane and cosmic. Light could honor ancestors, guide spirits, or proclaim imperial harmony. Particularly in the Song Dynasty, ceremonies tied to state rituals would be saturated with symbolic display, turning the physical act of burning wax into something grander, announcing order against chaos, light against dark. Asterisk, the quirky tidbit comes quickly. You notice an assistant nervously fidgeting, because this central candle has been designed with a hidden gimmick. Small incense pellets are tucked inside, timed to release fragrance at certain burn point. Cinnamon here, sandalwood later. The effect is dramatic. Not only does time announce itself visually, but the very smell of the air shifts, as if the universe itself has turned a page. Think of it as a scented clock that doubles as a cosmic air freshener. Truly practical for night-long ceremonies when people might otherwise nod off on their cushions. Asterisk. And yet, historians still debate what these candle-heavy rituals truly meant. Were they deeply spiritual, connecting the emperor to heaven, or were they more political, reinforcing his image as master of order? The line is blurred. Scholars today still murmur, was the wax really about the divine, or just theater with pretty lighting? Asterisk, you draw closer now. The emperor nods gently, attendants bow, and the flames ripple like a choreographed sea. At a signal, one official extinguishes a smaller candle near the altar. The act is performed quietly, solemnly, and you sense the symbolism immediately. The snuffing of a flame means an ending, perhaps of a ritual cycle, perhaps of the emperor's contemplation. Whatever it represents, it whispers that time has not just passed, it has transformed. Asterisk, the effect stirs something inside you too. You've been walking through so many rooms, each with their lone candle marking intervals. But here, with dozens upon dozens lit, and some extinguishing one by one, time feels different. It's not merely an hour, slipping, it's an entire night, reshaping. One circle of wax at a time. Asterisk, the room shines golden, then dims as flames are pinched out in sequence, like stars fading from dawn's approach. Each puff of smoke curls upward, trembling above the officials, before vanishing into darkness. You smell the faint horn-like tang of extinguished wick, smoky but sharp, weaving among the sweeter incense. Asterisk, and though the ritual carries a solemn mood, you can't help the wry edge of thought. Somewhere, a servant is definitely panicking about the puddles of wax collecting faster than anyone expected. Sacred symbolism for the emperor, late-night cleanup shift for somebody else. Asterisk, but tonight, you don't mind. You let your gaze soften, following the flutter of candles as they bend with unseen drafts, their flames rising and dipping like monks bowing in rhythm. You find yourself syncing your breathing again, the flickers guiding each inhale, each exhale. Slowly, each breath grows longer than the last, as if the ceremony itself is inviting you to slide down into rest. Asterisk. By the time the final giant candle sighs lower into its dragon-carved holder, shadows have fattened, and the once golden hall is bathed in softer darkness. Ministers still kneel, heads bowed, unwilling to move until the emperor signals. But you're already half sinking, half dreaming, lulled by the ritual pace where light and time vanish hand in hand. Asterisk, one lingering thought. For these men, this is a ceremony of power. For you, it's a lullaby of wax. And both truths, somehow, are real tonight. When the echo of drums fades and the chamber grows still, you wander down yet another corridor, this one faintly buzzing with anticipation. The smell is different here, less ceremonial incense, more tangy whiffs of burnt wick, resin, and a few scents you'd honestly rather not place. This is a room humming with invention. You've stumbled into a workshop, the candlemaker's domain, where artisans and would-be geniuses bicker over which candle best obeys the stubborn rules of time. On long wooden tables lie rows of half-finished experiments, candles of varying heights, colors, and suspicious lumpy shapes. Wicks poke out at odd angles. Some burn bright, others are already sulking into pathetic puddles. The artisans pace around fussily, like chefs watching their soufflés rise, whispering prayers that the wax holds steady. At the far wall, bamboo slips are scrawled with painstaking notes. Burned one mark too fast. Collapsed at wind gust. Pleasant fragrance. Terrible accuracy. Imagine sticky note reviews scattered around a medieval Shark Tank. Here's your bit of solid truth. Chinese artisans, especially during the Song Dynasty, were renowned for practical innovations. Waxmaking was not just a craft but linked to ritual, commerce, and yes, these early flirtations with timekeeping. Some inventors sought ways to make wax softer or slower to burn, experimenting with different mixes of tallow, beeswax, and plant oils. And their audience wasn't just households sometimes. The emperor himself wanted proof that his schedule could be held steady by the right blend of wax. Now, here's the wonderfully odd part. One nervous artisan brags about his new sandalwood-infused candle that burns politely. He says it doesn't sputter rudely like its competitors. Across the table, another waves furiously about his hollow-core design, with little fragrant pellets that drop as they melt. Every pellet meant to mark half an hour. The problem? Sometimes they drop all at once into the tray with a noisy clatter, turning one soft night into chaotic percussion. If you want to sleep, this invention is about as useful as having a toddler bang cymbals next to your bed. Historians remain uncertain whether these artisan experiments were common or just eccentric curiosities. Did households really benefit from sandalwood timepieces, or were they novelties limited to court life? Some argue these efforts were symbolic of song ingenuity, reflecting a culture eager to harness materials for order. Others mutter that most people probably stuck to lamps and guesswork. You shrug, Aviv? Just seen one artisan proudly boasting about beeswax, scented with orange peel, insisting it makes more accurate hours. The debate, clearly, burns as inconsistently as the candles themselves. You tiptoe among the work tables, noticing the way the wax glistens under torchlight like melting jade or pearly stone. Some candles are perfect cylinders, others wobble like poorly baked loaves of bread. One artisan sighs, running fingers through his hair, watching his best creation cave inward 3 notches too soon. Another empire lost, he mutters. You admire the melodrama. If candlemaking is this stressful, perhaps they deserve the title Unsung Heroes of Time. And then, a tiny accident. An assistant leans too close, and hot wax splatters onto his sleeve. He yelps, hopping awkwardly away from the table, while another scolds him with mock severity. You can't help but laugh softly. It's an invention hall. But really, it feels more like a kitchen. Half-mad chefs forever testing recipes nobody actually asked for. Still, their persistence is oddly comforting. Science, whether modern or medieval, often thrives on mistakes and tiny explosions. You catch the smell of one particular candler, strange blend of rose oil and resin from distant traders, compared with the smoky tallow versions across the room. This one feels luxurious. It's almost charming. You think, this candle might be a terrible clock, but it's a perfect mood set. Picture emperors timing their audiences by scented flame drifting like perfume was its science, or just a way to impress visiting envoys with fancy smells. Perhaps both. Your own eyelids feel heavier as you watch these inventors shuffle anxiously. recording burns, debating politely, occasionally snapping at one another about wick thickness. There's something hypnotic about the repetitive nature of it all. Light, burn, drip, note. Their meticulous obsession becomes a lullaby. Asterisk, you pause at the door, glancing back once more. The candles continue their stubborn test routines, some flickering bright, others curling into half-dead puddles. The artisans murmur like guardians tending a fragile flock. You breathe deeply, letting the mix of sweet sandalwood, smoky fat, and faint citrus drift over you. Asterisk, the conclusion feels clear. These men may never produce perfect clocks, but they've given history something strangely beautiful. Candles that tried their best to hold time, even if they mostly managed to make the room smell nice. And perhaps that's not failure. Perhaps that is like sleep itself, its own quiet success. You've left behind the workshop squabbles of ambitious candlemakers, but the scent of their concoctions clings to you, half sandalwood, half-burnt tallow, as you find yourself drifting toward a quieter, less practical side of the palace. The rooms here are smaller, more intimate, and filled less with officials or artisans, and more with storytellers, attendants, and ordinary folk. Here, the candle isn't just a bureaucrat's stopwatch or an inventor's experiment. Here, under soft flame, it's a charm, a ward, a bit of magic. The room you wander into glows with warm flickers. A circle of attendants trade hushed stories over evening tea, the flames painting orange halos across their faces, instead of careful notches or timed incense pellets. These candles burn unmeasured, their wax spilling freely down the sides like wild vines. Their purpose tonight is not to keep anyone on schedule, it's to keep spirits at bay. Here's the historical truth. In many cultures, and certainly in parts of dynastic China, light carried not only practical meaning, but spiritual weight. Fire was protection. A flame could signal safety to wandering souls, or serve as an anchor, guiding ancestors through dark spaces. At night, when the palace halls would otherwise sink into shadow, these small flames shone as quiet guardians. And here's the quirk tucked into mythology. One story whispered here tells of candles driving away storms. Supposedly, if lightning threatened, you could light a candle and place it before an image of a deity to frighten the storm into passing. Another playful tale hints that candles, if placed just right, could calm restless ancestors and, possibly, though less officially noted, deter particularly stubborn in-laws from overstaying their visits. You glance at the storytellers, recognizing that dry smile in one man's tone. Was it a joke? Maybe. But the way the others laugh softly suggests everyone has secretly tried it at some family dinner. Historians, for their part, still debate whether these superstitions were actively practiced at court or mostly colored village lore. Was the Song Emperor himself convinced that wax carried divine sway? Or was it simply the common folk who whispered these beliefs in nightly circles? Records rarely confirm much. What they do reveal is that candles often made appearances in rituals, funerals, and festivals, so whether divine or decorative, their glow was never neutral. One attendant leans closer to the flame with wide eyes. "See how it dances," he says, pointing at a quick flicker. The others nod as though this means something, a spirit passing by, perhaps, or a messenger answering their prayers. You watch the flame yourself. It leaps briefly, then sways before calming again. You find yourself oddly reassured. Even if it is merely smoke and air, there is comfort in pretending it's more. Flame has a way of letting the imagination stretch farther, like shadows elongating across a wall. The candle's wax pools generously, spilling down the brass holder into solidified ripples, like a melted waterfall, frozen mid-cascade. The attendants chuckle about one candle's lazy drip, claiming it signals sluggish fortune. Another joke says a candle that topples entirely means someone's request for more rice wine has been accepted by the gods. The laughter is soft, not raucous, more like collective yawns, disguised as amusement. their voices wrapping the room in sleepiness. You step nearer to the group, listening as one woman tells a story of a traveling monk who supposedly used a single flame to reveal hidden demons along a road. She says the monk kept his candle steady, and wherever its glow stuttered, a phantom sulked in the bushes. You can't help smiling at the blend of fear and absurdity. Candle, as ghost detector, it's almost endearing. Imagine trying that with your bedside lamp. Hardly the same excitement. The thing is, here in this quiet circle, nobody seems to care if it's history, legend, or both. For them, the candle's purpose is to keep night less empty, to lend shape to their breath and their sleep. Fact and myth mingle like melted wax, pooling into one big indistinguishable form. The flames chirp, a faint hiss where wax hits metal trays. Your gaze softens. The ugly lump of accumulated wax looks cozy now, like a strange pillow. A clock's remains collapsing into rest. One man nudges it, joking, a candle's soul, resting on the tray. The group chuckles again, quietly, gently. And here's what you notice most. Everyone's heads seem heavier now, their eyelids lazy shudders. The flame has drawn out not just laughter, but yawns, sighs, the slow unraveling of awake into almost asleep. The myth, the superstition, the laughter, it was never really about spirits. It was about easing the room down into the night. You too feel yourself drawn into that sense. The warmth of flame, the curl of smoke, the whispers of ghostly tales. They don't agitate you, they comfort you, like a lullaby wrapped in superstition. Whether candle magic drives off storms, or just makes the hall smell faintly of resin, you don't mind? Tonight, you'd believe either. The laughter of candle myth tellers fades as you wander again, this time into a quieter, almost forgotten passageway of the palace. Here, the air feels heavier, the draft uncertain, carrying with it the faint scent of rodents and, yes, surely that was something scuttling nearby. You press on, cautious. Tonight, time is misbehaving, because you've reached the place where the great candle clock reveals its flaws. Asterisk at first glance. The flame you're watching burns faithfully, nibbling its way toward the next notch. Simple, predictable. But then PFFTA, gust, sneaks through an unseen crack in the wall, and suddenly the flame leans sideways like a drunk performer mid-dance. Wax sloshes unevenly, drips farther down one side, and the measurement is ruined. Imagine an empire's meeting schedule, torpedoed because the palace couldn't block one sneaky draft. There's your first reminder. Time, even royal time, is disastrously delicate. Asterisk historically. Here's the truth. Candle clocks, while clever, were never perfect. Uneven wax, flickering flames, air movement, and sloppy craftsmanship all meant results fluctuated. A candle might burn faster in one hall than another, faster on one humid night than on a dry one. As precise timekeepers, they were vulnerable in ways that kept official schedules flexible. You can practically hear exhausted scribes sighing, "The candle betrayed us again." Asterisk, and here's the endearing quirk. Sources whisper of palace pests, strats developing a taste for wax. More than one scheme for measuring time ended in chewed lumps, half-melted sticks bitten into grotesque shapes. Time itself interrupted by rodents. You can't help picturing a minister explaining solemnly, "Emperor, we reached this hour sooner than expected, because a rat ate 30 minutes. Truly, medieval bureaucracy deserved some hazard pay. Asterisk, historians still puzzle over whether anyone took these failures seriously enough to abandon the system, or whether they were written off as part of the pageantry. Some argue candles weren't really tools, but theater, visible symbol of ours melting away, regardless of accuracy. Others suggest they were indeed relied upon. Inconveniences and flaws shrugged off in the belief that close enough was all the empire required. The debate flickers like the flame itself, never wholly steady. Asterisk, in this dim hallway, the candle's failings become impossible to miss. Wax leans against the tray, dripping into a sloppy puddle rather than a neat mark. The flame dances like it's rehearsing for an opera scene. The shadow of a carved dragon jumps, stretches, then collapses again, leaving you unsure whether it looks regal or ridiculous. Asterisk, you chuckle softly, realizing the limits are almost more comforting than its successes. Isn't there something wonderfully human about tools that stubbornly refuse to be perfect? Unlike water clocks or sundials, the candle clock feels almost like a companion, bumbling along, making mistakes. It forgets, drips unevenly, succumbs to drafts. It's as fallible as the scribes who fall asleep at their desks, or the ministers who whisper poorly timed flattery. Asterisk nearby, a servant mutters, trying to trim the wick with long scissors designed for such corrections. The wick crackles, the flame steadies briefly, then sputters again. Always stubborn, the servant sighs, shaking his head. You smile, because yes, candles might glow as long as they please, but they misbehave with the attitude of a cat knocking papers off your desk. Asterisk, the wax has pooled such that the carved marks are practically unreadable now. The carefully measured increments look like unfortunate doodles melted by accident. Still, no one rushes in with a water clock to replace it. The Empire, apparently, accepts imperfection. Schedules bend with the flame's mood. Asterisk, here's a comforting realization as you sink deeper into this waxy corridor. Eyelids gentling, you understand that the candle never really failed. It was never supposed to be precise. It was supposed to be felt. People saw its descent, experienced its intervals, trusted it because it glowed. That was enough. The accuracy never mattered as much as the sense of time flowing. In drips and drops and curls of smoke, asterisk, another drip lands with a hiss, and you feel your body reacting in turns, lowing down, letting go. The candle leans, sighing toward the tray beneath, but still burns stubbornly upright, determined to finish the show, even in imperfection. You find it reassuring that time itself, in this place, never expected perfection, only rhythm imperfect, flickering, fragile, yet still steady enough to lull you into ease. Asterisk, the rodent scuttles away somewhere behind the wall, leaving you smiling at the thought of history's tiniest time thieves. The flame dims slightly, shadows thicken, and with it, another piece of your alertness burns away to dot. Asterisk, let the Empire frown over drafts and wax puddles. For you, it's simply another quiet call to melt into stillness. The palace fades into shadow behind you, and once again, you're swept along by the calm, slow drip of memory into another world this time, not a single chamber of Song China, but the wider stage of history itself. It feels as if the flame guides your steps, its glow stretching far beyond these carved Mandarin halls and into distant lands where other civilizations, too, squinted into darkness and asked, asterisk, how on earth do we keep track of time? Asterisk, asterisk, the flame tilts, and suddenly you're standing not beside a Chinese scribe, but beside an Egyptian priest. Here, light floods, differently torches curl black smoke skyward, while slender shadow sticks mark hours against sand. Egyptians, practical as they were, leaned on the steady traffic of the sun, using obelisks by day and water clocks by night. They even measured hours unevenly, summer's lengthier ones contrasted against winter's shorter size. Instead of carving hours in wax, they carved the very concept of time into stone. Asterisk then, with a blink, you've drifted eastward, smelling resin and incense along the Indian subcontinent. There, astronomers used gnomons and giant sundials, temples echoing with bells to announce divisions of night and day. The rhythm of chants, the cycles of breath, it all feels less about linear hours and more about cosmic alignment. Time measured not just to say when, but to harmonize with larger meanings. Festivals, rituals, cosmic order itself. You watch a candle lit nearby, small amidst grand stone structures, its flame secondary but still welcome. It isn't marked into sections like the emperor's wax rulers, but simply provides warm light for people who already feel the universe ticking by rhythm of drum and chant. Asterisk south. Now, slipping into asterisk Africa's vastness. Asterisk. You hear the rhythm of drums across certain communities, marking intervals, not with flames or carved increments, but through sound. Imagine time not measured visually at all, but kept by heartbeat rhythms passed across gathering places. Candles might flicker here too, traded across ports, but at their core, it is rhythm and human presence that holds the people's hours, not wax. There's something soothing about this, how deeply communal time becomes when measured by sound instead of solitary drips. Asterisk then westward you drift across oceans to medieval Europe. Here, in drafty monasteries, monks keep candles of their own, and unlike the song court, these monks measure not banquets or political intrigue but prayer. Candles are consumed across vigils, their flames tied to chants, repeating through the lonely hours of the night. In some abbeys candles even measured mandated silence. Asterisk, when it burns to this first mark. Break bread, when it reaches here, sound the next prayer. Asterisk C. Monks and emperors shared more than they knew time. The grand ruler fell into wax either way, except the monks often muttered complaints, not unlike yours. Why is my candle so short tonight? Asterisk the flickering flame shifts again, and the air takes on spices, coffee, and the hum of trade bazaars, the Islamic Golden Age. In some cities of the Abbasid era, candles were useful, but lamps burning oil were far more trusted, paired with astrolabes and sophisticated clocks powered by water and gears. Scholars here valued precision, truly measured star cycles for navigation and prayer, calculating exact hours for calls to worship. Their timekeeping made the Turkish candle innovations or song wax rituals look charming but almost crude. Still, you notice candles flickering in a scholar's room. He studies by their glow even as an elaborate water clock ticks steadily nearby, and you realize flame might not have ruled hours here, but it remained a faithful, quiet companion. Asterisk this world tour by wax is delightful, but disjointed. Because here's the curious truth, none of these systems were perfect. Each culture, each time, made their own peace with imperfection. Historians still wrestle with this comparison. Was song wax time truly in advance? Or just one cultural twist among many brilliant, flawed answers to the universal problem of darkness? Did anyone ever really believe their candle was a master of time? Or were they, like you, simply looking at flame and saying, asterisk, yes, this will do, asterisk returning slowly. You breathe in, and the smells of incense, wax, oil, and bread blur together. All the shadows meld into one larger truth, across continents and centuries. Humans bend toward flame, toward rhythm, toward something ephemeral to guide them. We never fully mastered time. We only borrowed its light, each in our own way. Asterisk the candle shrinks on its base, wax puddling sideways. Your thoughts melt with it. Comparisons blur until they no longer matter. No contest of precision, no rankings of inventions. A shared truth that across all places, people leaned on fragile tools to pace daily life. Asterisk you, to lean on this flame. And tonight, as the comparisons drip into softness, you find one certainty. Humanity's clocks were never about perfection. They were and are about reassurance, giving us permission to sleep, to wake, to eat, to dream. The echoes of distant cultures and their candles fade into the background as you once again return to the song court, wandering back into the soft glow of imperial halls. But something feels different now. You're no longer watching ministers fuss over wax levels or artisans argue about sandalwood wicks. You're leaning in with historians, bemused voices bouncing through centuries, all of them shaking their heads and asking the same thing. Asterisk, did any of this actually work? Asterisk, asterisk, it's like you're perched on the edge of a scholarly round table. Except the table is littered with bamboo slips and teacups instead of laptops. And every participant occasionally yawns at the flame instead of squinting at PowerPoint slides. The topic, though, is sharp enough to cut through even the sleepiest night. Were candle clocks practical tools? Or were they theater wax and fire pageantry pretending to measure hours it never could? Asterisk. Here's the hard, factual kernel. Debates among historians persist because the written accounts are slippery. Some sources describe candles with detailed markings, carefully measured in intervals. Others suggest they were symbolic, more part of rituals or elite palace activities, rather than true instruments for consistent hours. Add drafts from palace windows, uneven wax, accidental and you've got plenty of doubt about whether any minister's deadline was ever truly on time. Asterisk now for the quirky delight. One anecdote tossed around in the academic imagination is that perhaps candle clocks worked because nobody expected them to be perfect. If you already accepted that an hour was more like a tidy but approximate chunk of time, then the candle did its job just fine. Instead of causing panic, its flaws acted like built-in mercy. Imagine if someone said, "You're 15 wax strips late." But everyone simply nodded, shrugging as though that was inevitable. Maybe history was gentler then, softer, less obsessed with punctuality, and more about ritual rhythm. Not a rigid alarm clock, but a glowing suggestion. Asterisk historians still can't agree even now. Was the emperor fooled by his notched candles, convinced of their accuracy, or did he knowingly use them as a show of order? One camp argues the song emperors truly relied on them for nightly routines. Another insists it was ceremonial theater, proving that time itself bowed to imperial glow. And another still points out that, really, what is timekeeping but theater anyway? Whether by water drip, burning stick, or your glowing phone screen, it's all human attempts to wrangle something that refuses to be caught. Asterisk around you. Flames wobbled lazily, almost amused at the fuss. Their dance seems to whisper. Asterisk debate if you like. We'll keep burning regardless. Asterisk and you're caught off guard by how soothing that thought is. Isn't there a strange relief in knowing the historian's arguments? The footnotes bristling with uncertainty are all equally consumed by the same thing the candle has always been eating time itself. Asterisk, you peer into the candle's puddle of melted wax, where its reflection swims, distorted and sleepy. You imagine scholars, centuries from now still circling this reflection, arguing, was it reliable? Was it ritual? How accurate could a wick be anyway? Their words are just more drips on a tray, drops melting into their own inevitability. Asterisk, one historian, at least in your imagination, leans back with her scroll and sighs. Perhaps the candle wasn't meant to be accurate. Perhaps it was meant to remind us that hours melt away whether we notice or not. There, that's closer to truth than any tick of precision. The candle, flawed and stubborn, was never about exactness. It was about presenza, flicker a marker, a dance in the dark that reassured people who needed reassurance. Asterisk, the wax hisses as another drop falls. The debate goes quiet in your head. The scholars close their scrolls, or maybe just yawn too heavily to continue. Every unanswered question softens into comfort. We don't need to know for certain. We only need to sit here, watch the flame bend, and let those doubts dissolve. Asterisk, and as the historian's quills fall silent, as the flame shrinks smaller and smaller, so does your own buzzing need for answers. You don't solve the mystery. You don't need to. You simply drift with the candle's light, a witness to history's most endearing flaw that we measure time not so much to capture it, but to companion it, however unevenly. The scholarly debates recede into softer echoes, dissolving into the long corridors of memory, until once more you find yourself back with the Emperor's candle. Its flame is smaller, now delicate, wavering, almost shy. The once proud tower of wax has shrunken into a stub, drips pooling like tiny lakes of cloudy amber around its base. Time itself is folding inward, winding down with the candle's body. Asterisk, it hits you. This is the candle's final act. The grand experiment of turning fire into clockwork is tapering toward conclusion, and with it, your night in Song China is too. You lean against a carved column, watching the flames stubbornly fight drafts that push from unseen cracks. Every flicker feels like history whispering goodbye. Asterisk, here's the factual grounding. Candle clocks eventually gave way to other, more advanced methods. Water clocks remained popular, growing more intricate, and by later centuries, mechanical clocks, those ingenious ticking machines. Inspired partly by exchanges along the Silk Road, would eclipse wax and wick entirely. The future belonged to gears, metallic teeth, and bell chimes, not two flickering puddles of wax on trays. China itself would develop and refine remarkable astronomical devices. Stone towers housing elaborate hydraulic-driven gears to mark time with more authority than any candle ever could. Asterisk, the quirky shade to all this. Candle clocks didn't disappear overnight. They lingered in corners of ritual, legend, and habit, like a family member you can't quite dismiss. Candles remained at altars, in festivals, marking quiet hours even when serious timekeeping had moved on. In some places, they were playfully reimagined as scented novelties, children's night games, or even as humble nightlights to see whether it was proper or too early to wake. So, in a way, while the imperial candle was replaced, it never truly retired. It just changed jobs to something less stressful. Asterisk, historians still ask, were candle clocks truly taken seriously, or were they always halfway between tool and charm? Looking now at the almost spent stub, you realize the answer doesn't matter. Time measured by wax was never about perfection. It was about comfort, presence, a steady reassurance in the dark. Asterisk, the emperor himself, once so invested in these wax rulers, sits quieter now. You can almost see him, robes heavy, eyes softer, gazing at the flame with more reverence than calculation. When he first commissioned notched candles, perhaps he dreamed of true order, schedules governed with fire's precision. Now, as the stub fades, perhaps he understands what you've already felt, that the flame was never about dictating control. It was about helping humans, scribes, ministers, and you walk gently through the long night. Asterisk, the flame shrinks again, wobbling like a weary performer bowing before exit. The last inch of wax tilts, hissing as droplets fall sluggishly into the tray. It spits delicately, once, almost as if saying, "That's it, I've burned enough for you all." Then it steadies, giving one final glow, far brighter than before, little swan song of light, before folding into itself and vanishing in a soft exhale of smoke. Asterisk, darkness drapes over the room, instantly, heavier than you expected, but you don't feel abandoned. You feel calmer, wrapped in the lingering warmth of all those hours spent with this candle's glow. Its wax may be spent, its flame gone, but the rhythm it offered, the gentle reminder that time is less a tyrant and more a companion, remains. Asterisk, and so, you linger in the dark, belly full of banquet dishes, ears still ringing faintly with whispered myths, heart slowed to the pace of dripping wax. The candle is gone, but you still glow faintly inside, lit not by fire, but by the understanding that time doesn't have to rush. It can melt, it can soften, it can ease you, like a lullaby written in fire. Asterisk, the empire will carry on without this flame. New inventions will take its place, but in tonight's quiet, none of that matters. What matters is that you were here, with this emperor, this candle, this steady rhythm, and it has carried you gently into rest. Asterisk, and now, as the last of the candle's smoke curls upward into the rafters, let your own body follow its example, slowly, gently, as though you too were made of wax. Softening, imagine your muscles melting down into rest, Your shoulders grow heavier, like the last drops falling into the bronze tray. Your breath drapes long and loose, each inhale softer, each exhale quieter, as though the room itself is breathing along with you. Asterisk, there's no more need for debating historians, chattering ministers, or bustling scribes. Their voices faded when the flame did, carried away into the same quiet night. You remain here in darkness, but it is not the kind of dark that presses. It's a kind of dark that comforts, folding neatly over you like silk sheets. Asterisk, the palace fades, the banquets, the ceremonies, the myths, they blur together into harmless memories, details fluttering away like faint sparks. What remains is only warmth, the steady rhythm of melted hours, now sinking into your chest, your heartbeat aligning with its patient tempo. Slowly, everything is slower. Asterisk, you might picture yourself as the candle itself, small but glowing. Your flame leans one way, then another, before finally deciding not to push at all. You no longer need to tell time, to keep order, to entertain emperors or scribes. Your only task now is to rest, to flicker once, twice, and then to settle. Asterisk, feel the stillness now. In through the nose, slow, out through the mouth, slower still. Each breath a soft puff of smoke, lazily drifting upward, gone before you need to think about it. Your body rests deeper. Your mind glows dimmer, and as you slide toward sleep, imagine the last of your wax pooling comfortably, cool, safe, silent.